Let's examine the macro formations through the telediagram program. For this, we have placed one macro block on the screen. The structure of the macro block allows you to create an if loop by consolidating multiple scenarios under one roof or by making different exit assignments when exiting. You can use the on when trig is active option. Let's do an example together. Instead of physical signals, we use registers to set values. We also took two word flags to observe the statuses of the outputs. We use the binary register block to observe the 0 and 1 statuses. We connected one to the in0 input and the other to the in1 input, and let's create the scenario by double-clicking inside the macro block. As per our scenario, we will compare the data coming from I0 and I1 in the V0 variable. We subjected it to an AND operation. From the list, we can observe which operation can be performed. Since we have connected it directly to IN0 and IN1, we have transferred the data directly as IN0 and IN1. The if structure is as follows: if, the name of the variable that will enter into the if and how many lines it will skip. We have made it 0 for the line side for now, we will change it there. If both are 1, we will make the O0 output 4. According to the writing format, you can make it as 4 plus 0, 4 minus 0. We will also make the O1 output 5. So if both values in the binary register are 1, O0 output will be 4, O1 output will be 5. We ended the process with AND. Otherwise, let O0 output be 3, O1 output be 4. We set the value. And we definitely need to add a return at the end of the macro to terminate it. Now we can determine how many lines to skip here. It will write 4 and 5 if the condition is met. But if the condition is not met, it determines here how many lines to skip. For example, skip 4 lines and continue from 4 lines down. Now let's load this onto a device. Let's test it together. Yes, as it is now seen, both are 0, so the O0 output is 3, O1 output is 4. So it doesn't meet the condition. Now let's make both of them 1. There is no change now. The reason for this is that we entered the AND operation expression as a lowercase e, which would become a capital E. Let's change this and upload the project to the device again and continue. When both are 1 at the same time, we observed that the output was 4 and 5. Thus, thanks to the macro, we performed the operation of obtaining two different outputs based on two different values. If the condition is met, it writes 4 and 5, if not met, it writes 3 and 4. Like our macro definition. Now we will talk about a different writing style. Now without linking IN0, IN1 to any value, I will show you how we can carry the data of a block. Each block has its own block number below it. You can also see it with the letter B equals 0. The block number of the other binary register is also 1. We can use a writing format like the $ block number. $0 and $1. Meaning compare the data with block number 0 with block number 1. We uploaded the project. As seen, it is currently operating on block numbers 3 and 4. We sent 1, no change. If both are 1 at the same time, as seen, the block outputs were 4 and 5. This time we didn't link it to their inputs. We wrote it as $0 and $1 using a $-based writing format. Now let's add 2 word registers. We will create a different scenario. How a macro is written in a numerical expression other than 0 and 1, let's exemplify that. Now we can continue on block numbers. If block number 3002 is less than 100, let that be our first condition is v0. Macros continue sequentially from top to bottom. Let's add a second condition. Block 3003, the value of the register Then, if both conditions are met, let's add a new condition below it. That is, if both v0 condition block 3002 is less than 100 and block 3003 is also greater than 20, we can use the OR operation for this condition fulfillment situation. Meaning if both signs are met, it's enough for me. Then we can introduce Now how do we make the output statuses? Let's use the O00 output. We deleted one output, O1. We can use one output. Therefore, because we dropped one line, we reduce the number of lines to skip to 3. Let the output status be 10 if the condition is met, let O0 output be 10. Otherwise, if the condition and use the on when trig is active option. We will manually set the trigger input. Let's check this now. We are loading the project onto the device. We connected to the device again. Let's start online monitoring. Now the trigger is not active. The macro does not work under these conditions. Let's check again based on our evaluation. Block 3002 is less than 100. Block 3003 is greater than 20. Both conditions are connected to the OR gate. When we send trig now, we saw it writing the value 10. Why? We know it's less than block 3002 is 100. Let's raise the value over 100. We wrote an expression like 150. Because we didn't send the trigger, the macro didn't work. Now we sent the trigger. We saw it drop to 0 immediately. Because the conditions of the OR gate scenario are not met. Now let's look at another scenario. We are waiting for it to be greater than 20. We wrote an expression like 50. Now the trigger is active. We sent 10. But it works when trig active, that is, we need to send a rising edge trigger again. We sent trig and saw it drop to 0 status. Thus, we adapted the macros in this way. As seen on the screen. If we observe again, if the condition is met, the output is 10, if not met, the output status is 0. Why do we put two ends? Because it is expected to complete the process and return to the beginning. If we put an end to its return here, it will write the value 10 if the condition is met. But it cannot return. It cannot complete the process, so it cannot perform the next comparison operations. Therefore, we put two different ends to sustain this loop. If the if condition is met, it will write 10, if not, it will write 0. And we'll start querying again from the first line as soon as it sees the end. Until when? Until the trigger time comes. If you don't say work while trig active, it will update its own software loop according to any change and change the output status.